Hello, everybody. This is episode 102 of the Best Games Period, the podcast where every week we get together and we talk about a game that we think deserves to be counted among one of the best games of all time. Or maybe we don't. Maybe we think it's just a great game. Either way, this is the show where we sit down and we talk about the game's flaws, the game's strengths, and kind of trying to evaluate it based upon our arbitrary critiques. So, I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and with me is my wonderful and stylish co-host, Naomi Lugo.
Aw, I try.
I mean, you have blue, you're rocking the blue hair, you know, and not many people can do that.
Well, thank you.
Except, I mean, there's you, and there's the sidekick of the protagonist of the game we're going to be talking about this week, which is Life is Strange.
I think she kind of hijacks the story, and then Max becomes her sidekick. But anyway, we can discuss that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. And but before we jump into that, how are you doing? What are you playing? What's crack-a-lacking these days?
So I actually finally jumped on the Overwatch bandwagon after 2 years?
Really?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's been pretty fun.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie. I played a couple games this weekend, 2 in a row, and my heart rate was through the roof. And I was like, I think I was so dorky that I took like a screenshot of my first win.
Aww.
Like, with my team. I know. It was like a reflex, and I was like, what did I just do? That was. So yeah, I've been rocking Diva, and
she's the best.
Yeah, and she's adorable, so that helps too.
Mm-hmm.
And then playing Pokemon Sun and Moon, because I'll be playing that forever and ever, because that's how you play Pokemon.
True.
But yeah, what you been playing?
Well, I have mostly been powering through Life is Strange games, plural, because I actually played all 5 episodes of Life is Strange, and then I played through all 4 episodes of Life is Strange Before the Storm, which is the prequel to Life is Strange. I enjoyed myself quite a bit.
Right on.
So, yeah, after this Life is Strange week, I'm going to be diving into another Dontnod game. And Dontnod are the developers behind Life is Strange, but not the prequel, which is interesting. But anyway, they just released Vampyr, which is a very different game about basically being a vampire in like 1800s London during a plague outbreak, and you're kind of a serial killer. Anyway,
do you say hella though? Like, are you a hella vampire?
I don't
Vampyr?
know.
Sorry,
I don't know. Maybe I haven't played the game yet. I've had the review code for a while. Oops, but
we all try our best.
Yeah. So this game took over my life for a week, and it was a great time. And so I'm really looking forward to talking about it, because I wasn't really sure what I was going to be expecting, but it certainly wasn't what I found. And I think that makes it all the more captivating of an experience. Did we have a poll this week?
So we didn't, but in honor of episode 100, we asked you guys what your top 5 games were, and we got a few responses there. From Joe Kent, we had Mass Effect Trilogy, and I believe that you and Daniel also put Mass Effect in your honorable mentions, I believe, right? Pokemon series, that's one that's dear to my heart too. We got Civilization 5, we got Skyrim, Stardew Valley, and then from James Jackson, I know who that is, we got Witcher 3, Diablo 3, Final Fantasy 7, Metal Gear Solid, and Dad of Boy, aka God of War. And then from Undead Ed, we have Super Mario World, Dark Souls, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and Portal. So all awesome games. Thank you for letting us know. Guys, we always love having a conversation with you on the Twitters.
And some of those might make it onto our list of potential games. So thank you for sharing with us what you think some of the best games of all time are. And you're always welcome to throw those out there to us at any time. We like adding different games to our list, and it is a rather long list, but we're always looking to make it longer. So shout out your ideas to us on Twitter or Patreon or Facebook or wherever, really, and we'll try and get to those someday. We only do one of these a week, so
we try our best.
Yes. So all of that kind of being said, time to rewind a little bit and get us back to talking about Life is Strange.
I see what you did there.
So Life is Strange is this... Well, it's a strange game. It's not like anything I've ever really played before, because it's more of a slice of life than anything else. But a slice of life that has like a slight twist to it. Where at the end of the first episode, the protagonist, Max Caulfield, discovers she has a limited ability to control time and kind of play with it a little bit, so she can go back several seconds or like a minute or something and redo different things. And over the course of the 5 episodes, she discovers various different quirks to that ability, but for the most part, it's just her trying to live her life over the course of like a week, I think. It's hard to nail down exactly the timeline, just because you're
jumping all over that timeline.
It's a game about time travel and alternate realities, and but at its core, it's mostly a slice of life, which I think is reflected in the prequel, which is doesn't have any superpowers. It is purely a slice of life. And so it's one of those things where it never explains how she gets superpowers, because that's not really important to the story. She just gets them.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be implied that it has something to do with like. Actually, the part of the core conflict when it comes to her powers is like, are they mystical or are they scientific or whatever? And the game ultimately kind of gives a middle finger to trying to figure that out, saying exactly. It doesn't matter.
So that was a point I was going to bring up, actually. That kind of retrospectively took a little bit away from the game. When I first played it, I was completely enthralled, and I didn't care. I didn't care about these powers, like where they came from. It was just cool, right? Yeah. But kind of after playing Life is Strange Before the Storm, I kind of just wondered if maybe they just leaned on that as a plot device, and I'm just kind of trying to decide if it takes away from the game, because looking back, it kind of makes it cheesy. And I know we talked a little bit before recording, but you actually liked the main game more than the prequel, and I actually like the prequel more than the game. So maybe it just talks to different tastes, or I don't know. I liked how big of a dork Max Caulfield was. Because throughout the entire series, like, her arc is kind of basically becoming like from a shy person who's not willing to put themselves out there to becoming more of an assertive adult, and that arc is interesting to me. Both, I guess the thing I'm getting at is that it doesn't really matter where the powers came from. Like, that's not that. I feel like that would be an entirely different story, Yeah.
And
I'm just saying I don't necessarily need it explained. It's just like I don't really need that at all in the game, Like, they could have done something. Yeah, they still could have hit the same story points without going into the supernatural. And I think that
was it supernatural?
Or whatever. It might have been a fairy godmother blessing Max with these powers. And that it just kind of, that's what I was really curious about going into Before the Storm, because I mean the big thing was that this game wasn't going to have that aspect to it. It was just going to explain who Chloe was in a bigger detail in that time before Max came back to town. Mm-hmm. And I was a little skeptical at first, but then I just got really into the game. I was still completely enthralled in it. So it's just, after playing the prequel, Yeah, I just don't think it was totally necessary. But then again, it would have been a completely different game, so it's obviously hard to judge that.
Yeah, I think that mechanically the powers play better into the kind of game that they were making. Like, it's just convenient to be able to rewind time for a game like this, because then you can see how different scenarios play out. And it added a lot to the puzzle solving sections. And I know puzzle solving isn't necessarily your favorite thing, but
yeah, but these kind of puzzles, you know, they don't bug me.
Yeah, I mean,
they were pretty easy.
they were pretty easy, but like easy in the way that it still makes you feel clever for having figured them out, because it's using like a weird time travel power.
Yeah, that's true.
Or like, you know, you do something just to see what will happen, even though you know it's going to have a terrible result, and then you can rewind time and be like, I never did that. And I liked the ability to kind of skip through conversations, which you do not have the option of doing in the prequel.
Yeah.
So it was.
I guess it just. Oh, go ahead.
It was just convenient from that aspect, which and it played into that in a clever way, I think.
Yeah, and I guess maybe I just like Chloe a lot more than Max. And that's probably just where my bias is coming in. I mean, she's got blue hair, and she's a badass.
Yeah, 100%. No, I totally get where you're coming from. Although, I will be 100% honest, the amount of teen angst that was going on in the prequels sometimes got to me. I was just like, everybody calm down a little bit. No, not even behave, but just like, calm down a little bit here.
Take control of those hormones.
I'm a little bit irritated by what's going on here. But I liked the whole. I liked how that line was straddled a little bit better in the main game, I think, because what the prequel does really well is kind of highlight the awkward transition from like being a teenager into being like sort of an adult, but you're not really right there yet, and all the weirdness and awkwardness that can come with those social interactions. Whereas the main game is more about like figuring out who you are as an adult, rather than I'm growing up and like dealing with that realization.
Yeah. Yeah, Max is definitely more mature than Chloe, that's for sure. Even though Chloe likes to pretend she's way more otherworldly. Yeah, they're definitely kind of opposite characters, and they did a pretty good job picking those archetypes. So another thing I wanted to bring up was that this was, they're French, right? Dontnod was a French studio of mostly older males writing a game about the Pacific Northwest and teenage girls.
And they did such a good job.
They did, but I mean, of course, not ignoring the whole dialogue shenanigans where we had the word hella thrown in our face about a billion times. And yes, there were some very awkward dialogue moments.
You know, though, I felt like it all worked really well. Like, I was not bothered by the use of the word hella a lot, and I don't know, it didn't seem. I know some people complained about that, and maybe it did take some people out of the game, but for me, I was like, kids latch on to weird, dumb things all the time.
Yeah,
like,
lit.
Explain to me any popular internet meme of like the last 4 years, and most of them are just very dumb. The internet was obsessed for like 2 months with a frog on a unicycle, so you know, I can't fault the game for latching onto the word hella, because I can totally see that being like a thing in a rural town on the west coast.
Yeah, I suppose, but I always thought that hella was like a East Coast thing. I guess that kind of bugged me too. Like,
I'm from the Midwest, so I don't really know what the coasts actually do. So maybe that's part of it too.
I mean, I partially grew up in California, it's different than the Pacific Northwest, but we never said hella, or I don't know. Maybe times have changed and we all just switch around our slang.
Maybe it took a while to migrate north.
Maybe it did. Maybe kids are just saying hella, hella, hella now down in California.
I mean, it could be.
All the time. Who knows? It's been a while.
Are we out of touch?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
We'll have to do some like dialogue scouting when we're down in California next week.
Well, yeah, just listening in on teenagers. We won't look creepy at all. Don't worry about us. We're just doing social experiments, teenagers. Don't worry about the adults just trolling on you. But, like, the way they prepared for the game was that they, like, visited the Pacific Northwest a couple times. And, like, they still did a pretty fantastic job of creating this story. And that's another point I wanted to touch on, is that it's not a completely unique style. Like, it's an episodic, almost walking sim kind of thing. Like, it's been done in Telltale games and, oh gosh, I was thinking of another one earlier, but I can't remember
like the reboot of King's Quest.
Yeah, and there was another one. Anyway, I'll remember it later on when it's not relevant. But it takes these elements, but it's still able to be completely unique. And I've been kind of struggling with defining why it resonated with me so much and why it was still so effective. Because, I mean, looking at it from an outside perspective, right? It is a game about teenagers, teenage girls, teenage angst, and it has a formula that usually wouldn't work on me. Like, it shouldn't really work. Like, it's like a teenage drama in a game. But it still completely does work for me. Like, I absolutely love this game. I loved playing through it. I played it the first time kind of skeptical. I got it on sale and I was like, hey, I've heard about this game. You know, why not? I'll play it. And it just completely hooked me. And I can still not really figure out why that is 100%. And I was looking through Reddit, because Reddit seems to be the most, you know, openly honest about just why people love their games. And I still didn't get anything from them about what just made this game special for me.
I have a working theory.
Okay.
And I think that it's because there aren't a lot of games that are this grounded in reality, and specifically the rural kind of working class, kind of down on its luck kind of town reality, that I think is a lot more common than a lot of people like to realize. Because playing this game, I just thought of, you know, a lot of the time that I spent up on the North Shore in Minnesota. There are a lot of smaller towns that relied on kind of the mining industry, and, you know, sometimes those places live and die based on the one factory that's around. And, you know, they grew up, like, you know, 80, 100 years ago and have kind of been on a slow decline since then. And that's the kind of feeling that I got from Arcadia Bay, which is the setting of this town. Like, there are very few places around that have a fresh coat of paint on them. There are things kind of falling apart at the seams here and there. But, like, it's not like some kind of ramshackle shanty town or anything like that. People still live there. People still love the place. You know, there are people who have spent their entire lives there and love it to death. But and that's the kind of setting we don't usually see in games. We see a lot of it in movies, like a lot of dramas can be set in these kinds of places, but in games, like, you don't see these places unless, like, they're already the site of an apocalypse in, like, The Walking Dead, or you know, games like that. There's always that kind of veneer of, oh, these places have been devastated by zombies, or, you know, oh, you're trapped here and there's a crazy cult, you know. And that's not really the setting for Life is Strange. Even the main game is just Max has these powers, and that it's never explained, but no one else is running around with superpowers as far as we know.
And she could just be insane, so there's that.
I don't think that that's accurate,
I don't think so either.
But, and so you have all these things in the setting that differentiates it from everything else. But on top of that, you have what I think are really compelling characters, and it has the bravery to tackle subject matter that's pretty serious and that a lot of people struggle with in their everyday lives, but don't necessarily see reflected back at them in video games all that often because, let's be real, suicide isn't necessarily very marketable unless, like, it's, I have a hand grenade and there's a horde of 1,000 zombies coming and I need to blow it up to save, the baby and the lady who has the baby. Like, it had, like, a noble sacrifice kind of thing. Like, this game full-on tackles just a high school student committing suicide after going through a really rough time with cyberbullying and mental trauma, basically, and sexual assault. Like, that's not something that is very marketable in video games, but Life is Strange tackles that head on, and deals with a lot of those issues. And so I think it just has, and to be fair, it's not enough to just tackle those issues, but the way that the game deals with those is very sensitive and well thought out, and I think very well considered, and it doesn't feel like it's just there for shock value. It's there as kind of because it serves the story, and because they felt it was an important thing to add into their game, and all of that kind of comes together to make it feel much more real than other kinds of games.
Okay. Yeah, and from what I was reading, they actually had consultants on staff who would basically just help with how they should deal with these tough subjects. And you can tell that they took that time and care in the show, or not in the show, in the game. But yeah, and I mean, there's also something just special about the characters. And again, I think it's something from the outside that shouldn't work. Like, they blatantly say that they used archetypes to build this game. And yeah, you can see them. Max is the shy, artistic girl, and Chloe is the rebel. Like, they are very, very much their cliched stereotypes, but they still used those archetypes, but made them very personable characters that you can still relate to.
Yeah.
Like,
sorry to just...
Oh, no worries.
Interject.
Go ahead.
I think there is a common misconception when it comes to using stereotypes, using tropes in things, because stereotypes and tropes can be used as tools. Like, it's fine to use a trope. It's not fine to just, like, rip off an entire thing, but using a trope is fine as long as you're putting kind of your own spin on things. A good example of this might be, like, The Breakfast Club, which is all about a very stereotypical group of, relatively
the jock,
well-off.
The criminal, the princess.
Yeah, but it comes together well, and, I haven't seen that movie in ages, and so I don't know if it's aged well for a modern day audience who might criticize it for any number of things, but throwing together all of these stereotypical types of characters, these archetypes, they're still able to make something unique and special that a lot of people adored at the time and to this day still really enjoy. And I think that's something that Life is Strange was able to do as well.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think, there's always the pressure as a young person, especially in high school, to latch on to your archetype. Like, you are almost pressured into it. Like, you become the jock and you have to stay with your jock group and all of that. So there's something very relatable and nostalgic, I guess, to that. And it's just kind of how high school is. It sucks, but it still happens. And I guess that's, I can just see parts of myself in both of those characters, but I'm not strictly one or the other, and that's totally fine.
Well, and I think a lot of Life is Strange is dealing with these kids who are becoming adults trying to break out of those roles. I think the game is very aware that that's something that does happen in real life. And so, part of Max's entire arc is breaking out of that shy, artistic, stereotype to becoming this more assertive and more courageous and adventurous person. Part of Chloe's arc is realizing she doesn't have to be, this stone cold punk type character or like a manic pixie dream girl type character. Like, she can be kind of her own person and let go of things and move on. And I think that you can kind of see that same ethos in a lot of other similar characters who are kind of confined by their stereotype in the background. I think maybe a good one is David Madsen. David's a good character of like a character breaking out of their stereotype, even though he's not a young adult. So maybe that's not the perfect one-to-one there.
We're always young adults, right? We're all young adults at heart.
Well, maybe a better way of expressing we're all young adults at heart is that everyone is constantly trying to put everyone in boxes all the time, and the part of growing up is realizing you don't have to be in any one of those boxes. You can be, you don't have to be the soldier, you don't have to be just the diner waitress or whatever. You're a person, and you're multifaceted, and you have different aspects and the capacity to change and grow.
Yeah. I mean, and another character we have to look at is Rachel then, because Rachel is all about breaking away from that image in a very self-destructive way. And I guess if you want, we can now talk about what the story does with Rachel, and because I've been struggling with it. Rachel,
it's interesting because Rachel never appears in the main game, right?
Yeah. The only time she does is when Chloe finds her body, or not even her body, just her earring, her signature earring.
No, they find her body, don't they?
Okay.
Yeah, they dig her up in the junkyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a rough
true.
Scene. Gosh.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure how I feel about how they dealt with Rachel's character, because obviously the main game came out before the prequel, and I feel like some parts of what they did with Rachel was kind of just wedged into the main game, but at the same time I think they treated her her character very beautifully. Like, they did a fantastic job of exploring it, and maybe I'm just bitter that it turned out so tragically, but
yeah,
so I guess
it does it casts a huge pall over the prequel 3 episodes. I was so upset. So I just finished the prequel trilogy of episodes prior to recording this. The last episode, after you play through this very meaningful and gorgeously done thing, is to remind you, oh yeah, she gets murdered by a psychopath.
Yeah, exactly. And
why'd you have to include that last scene in there? We already know that. We already know.
Yeah. And it's like, I feel like they went into the prequel not really wanting to get rid of her that way. Like, they took their time and just made her into this fully blossomed character, and then by the way, she died in this horrific way. I think that's probably the best way you could go about doing something like that, though, right? Yeah.
We just didn't need the reminder that was going to happen, because we had already played the main game.
Let us live in bliss.
Yeah.
I just feel so bad for Chloe. Goodness.
But I like how they deal with Rachel Amber in the main game, because we it's one of the many ways, and probably the biggest way that's most obvious, where the game is putting us in Max's shoes. Like,
yeah.
she's been so to kind of set this up. Max has been off in Seattle for the past 5 years, and she comes back to Arcadia Bay to pursue this photography program at kind of this prestigious. It's a high school, yeah. They're like seniors in high school.
Yeah. And then it's kind of hard to explain, but they have this arts program and they have live-in students, and Max is one of those live-in students, and she's pursuing the photography path within this school. But there are other regular students, and that's what Chloe was before she got expelled, because of course she did.
Yeah. But so Max has been gone for 5 years, and they used to be best friends, Chloe and Max. But then she moved away and then didn't call her friend or really have any contact with her aside from writing a few letters.
Did you play the prequel to the prequel, the extra episode?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Yeah, so
That makes everything worse.
Yeah, so Max leaves town. I mean, she doesn't do it on purpose. Her family was leaving. Like, the day that Chloe's dad dies in this horrific car accident. And that's kind of where Chloe's life completely changed and she becomes who she is.
Yeah, so there is this weird disconnect between them, and the entire series is kind of them becoming best friends again and mending that gap between them. Or alternatively, depending on how you kind of play it, possibly starting a budding romance, which is kind of how I interpret it. There was a lot of flirting going on in like the just like the we're just friends type of dialogue, which I think that's really neat, because like one of the things I remember reading about the development of this game is that Dontnod, this was actually their second game. Their first game was Remember Me, which was critically well received, but I think also kind of panned for a bunch of technical issues that marred it when it released. But this was their second game, and their first game had also starred a female protagonist, and they wanted to do Life is Strange, which takes it like a step further because you have a female protagonist and a female sidekick. And they described having so much difficulty finding publishers that were willing to go along with, a female face for the game. Keep in mind, Life is Strange came out in 2015, which is crazy. It's crazy that in 2015, you're still having trouble getting game publishers to think that a female lead is not marketable. But
big sigh.
Yeah. Anyway, so not only are they, female protagonists, but you're also throwing in kind of that LGBT aspect to it too, which I think is really like a brave choice in video games. Like, I had to sit back. I cannot remember off the top of my head the last LGBT protagonist in a game.
Yeah, it's like only been in like BioWare games where you can choose to, or like Dragon Age and Mass Effect. You can go along those lines, but it's not really a part of the story. It's kind of just an aside.
Yeah, I mean, and that's better than nothing, but
but it doesn't really tackle the issues of actually being LGBT.
Right, like you can't tailor the content. And this, to be fair, this game doesn't really dive into those issues too much.
Except for the prequel.
I mean, except for the prequel, but like even then, like the relationship is not really like portrayed as a problem or anyone around them having a problem with that relationship.
Because kind of no one knows, and no one really
Right.
has the chance to know.
Right. I mean, like, there are characters who can kind of, like, figure it out, but it's... I don't know, because it's not explicitly a game about, like, the like, lesbian or bi romance. There's that out in both the prequel and the main game, where Chloe has been kind of seeing Elliot, ends up being a creepy stalker. Spoiler. And then Max has Warren, who's meh.
Yep. I forgot about him until you said his name, so
Yeah.
I had to think for a second. That other white kid. Yep, there he is.
Yep. So I would like to see, like, a more like a game that tackles that a little bit more, but
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
okay with
but
what
I mean,
we got.
yeah, I mean, I just, when I was playing through the prequel, it was just so stunning to me. Like, I was so happy to see any of it. And I just kept on thinking that if I had this when I was going through, my coming out in high school, like, it would have been so amazing to have that. Just because, you have all these confusing feelings and you have no idea what's happening and you have no idea how to deal with it. And just being able to see any sort of media with just like a kind of honest look at what it's like.
Yeah.
It's
like how
just,
awkward
it means
can
so
be.
much. Yeah. Just the little details, of just how quickly these girls latched on to each other and just how they interacted, those awkward moments and the lashing out moments, all of those things. I think they did a really good job.
I would have liked the prequel to, like, get another 2 episodes to just have more time to flesh out a lot of these things, because there are certain elements in it that feel really rushed. But and I don't think that's their fault. They're trying to squeeze, like, a full story into 2 less episodes than the main series had. But so let's I guess the general story of Life is Strange is that Max and Chloe reconnect in kind of a moment of crisis, where Chloe is trying to hit up a rich kid for money named Nathan, and Nathan is an unstable psychopath who has a gun, and Max is in the bathroom kind of having a mental breakdown and happens to see Chloe get shot by Nathan. She freaks out, discovers she has the ability to rewind time, and from there undoes Chloe's death because she knows how to prevent it now. And then the 2 of them kind of start off, reconnecting and deciding they're going to try and track down what happened to Chloe's missing girlfriend, Rachel Amber, and that kind of spirals into this whole investigation and trying to piece these clues together, and there are several suspicious people, and it has, like, that kind of gripping energy that, popular crime solving shows have, where you're like, okay, how are we putting all these clues together? And it makes you feel really smart and clever for, succeeding in these relatively simple puzzles. And then you find out that Nathan Prescott isn't the only town psychopath, and that spoiler again, but the photography teacher is also a crazy psychopath who is mentoring Nathan in how to become a serial killer, and and then also, having rewound time so much, Max has inadvertently caused, like, this singularity-like disaster, they assume, in the form of this colossal tornado that is going to wipe out the entire town of Arcadia Bay and kill everybody.
Which I will give the game. That is a pretty cool plot device. Like, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
And this storm is kind of looming throughout the game, if I'm remembering correctly, right? They don't know why, but then there's one moment at the end where it just becomes clear.
Yeah, I mean the game opens up with her having a vision of this storm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So.
And what choice did you make?
Oh, I didn't even have to think about it. I sacrificed the entire town.
Okay. Yeah, same here.
I was like, I've already watched people die over and over to save her life. I got tortured by a weird psychopath in a secret photography dungeon in order to save her life. When I could have just, been a famous photographer somewhere else. I gave all of that up to save her life. I'm not gonna just, let her die to save the town, and I'm not even sure that would save the town. So,
I see the justification there.
I mean, screw the town. I felt bad for some of the people because that the entire last episode is solving the creepy serial killer problem and then trying to save people from dying in this tornado, so that you can then save Chloe. And so it kind of forces you to go through the greatest hits of all these characters you've gotten to know over the course of the past 4 episodes.
And then you just kill them all.
Yep. I mean, the game, to be fair, the game gives you the option to save them all but kill your best friend / love interest. So I preferred just driving off into the sunset
and not thinking about the horrible, unspeakable thing that you just did.
But I mean,
same.
I don't even know if it's that horrible and unspeakable, You
killed an entire town.
Did she, though?
Yeah.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it was her power to use, and she was using it to try and save somebody she loved, and so...
Instead of a bunch of people.
I mean...
Who lived in the town.
It was a crappy town anyway. So, I don't know. Again, it kind of runs into that whole time travel problem where you're but she could have gone back in time and fixed, the storm and stuff. Or, warned some of the people she was close to. A bunch of different things. But,
that would make our heads explode.
From a narrative perspective...
Let's not think about it.
From a narrative perspective, it works really well.
Yeah.
It's the whole Back to the Future problem. You have a time machine. You can fix a bunch of different problems, but... the story demands that you end it someplace understandable and not convoluted. So,
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I just loved seeing this real. It felt real to me. The location and the people and these problems that they're having, and not all of them can be fixed by rewinding time. Because sometimes that what happens is out of your hands.
I did appreciate that there weren't neat little timeline or little tie-ups for all the storylines. There was still stuff that was very fucked up and that will always probably be that way. And you can't change the people, even if you can rewind your own actions.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really stuck with me throughout the entire mainline game is there's an interaction you have between where you can kind of intervene between there is an interaction in which you can intervene in this argument between Chloe and her stepdad, David Marsden, and depending on how you play that entire scenario, David gets so upset and Chloe is antagonizing him that he physically hits Chloe. And from that point on, I hated him so much. But then you rewound time and he never did that. that at least in my gameplay, I rewound time, I intervened, he never did that, and then at the end of the game, he's the person who manages to save Max from this underground, photography killing bunker from this serial killer. And there seems to be kind of like a more understanding outcome. And so like holding these two different versions of this character in my head kind of messed with me.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Did you have anything like that when you were playing through?
Well, I guess the big one is where you can go back, or I guess the story kind of forces you to go back and save Chloe's dad, right?
Yep.
But then you get a completely different timeline where then Chloe is injured and she becomes a completely different person. I think she still has blue hair though in that, doesn't she? Or... No blue hair. Okay. So that was an interesting look at that. But now that you just...
Sorry.
Yeah. I'll go ahead.
Oh, she becomes a paraplegic and asks you to essentially euthanize her.
Which is
It's
a very
rough.
dramatic version of what you said. But I think what yours was more interesting because it just shows that people can be capable of so many things, and the external factors kind of defines who they are, because it's how you react to situations is who you are, not necessarily the things that happen to you. And it just, I can see where that messed you up, because that's so true, because he could have been this person who could have done this violent thing to a child, or he could have just been this person who redeems himself in the end.
Yeah. And I mean, and you kind of see that in other characters throughout the franchise too. Like there is a drug dealer named Frank, and depending on how you interact with him, he can be either a mortal enemy who wants to kill you, or he can be like a pretty alright person who has a pretty cool dog.
Yeah, this dork in his
RV.
Does he have... Yeah, RV, there we go. With his dog that he loves a lot.
So the choices felt like they mattered a lot.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because you have a time winding power that allows you to kind of get the outcome you want a lot of the time. So I find it really interesting that a lot of people had different choices there, because at the end of every episode, like a Telltale game, it kind of gives you a breakdown of who around the world chose what percentage of people chose each outcome. And I found myself often on like the weirdly lower end of the majority, or sometimes lining up with the or just sometimes discovering that there were entire different options that I never got or never realized were available.
Yeah, I did appreciate that. That was cool.
Yeah. So I don't know. I thought that was, in a lot of ways, I thought that Life is Strange felt like where Telltale should have been years ago and just hasn't gotten there at all.
Absolutely.
And it made me realize how far behind that game design is, even as brilliant as I thought Tales from the Borderlands was, and as great as I thought the Walking Dead seasons 1 and 2 were. That design sensibility is aging rapidly.
Yeah, and it's shown that people want that medium or that style of gameplay. They latch on to it because there's a huge following behind Life is Strange, and there's probably always going to be. I don't know if we can consider this a cult classic yet, or if it's just mainstream. It still needs a couple years behind it so we can look at it, but like people adore this game. They absolutely do.
I'm interested.
And I've had
Sorry.
I was just gonna say I've had conversations with people who I had no idea they would love this game so much. Like it just threw me out of left field that this certain type of person would just latch on to these characters so much, and that just shows what they were able to do with this game.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what the popular reaction to Life is Strange 2 will be, because I know they're working on that.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know.
So it's supposed to be done before 2020, and it's going to supposedly tackle a completely different story. So, but we still don't know what that means. It could still be in Arcadia Bay. It could be a completely different timeline. It could be a completely different genre. I don't think it will be. I think it will still be within this slice of life kind of thing, but beyond that, I really kind of don't know.
I'm kind of disappointed because I actually like how dorky and low key Max is as a character.
Yeah.
I find that very endearing, and I like the idea of her like blasting out of the future to the past as like some kind of time warrior. Like trying desperately to like alter the course of events so that a disaster doesn't happen. And maybe you're not playing as her, but I just really enjoyed the adventure that was Life is Strange, and I wanted to kind of see that continue on and see where that was going to go, because man, the timeline really diverges, as you might have noticed, from either you save the love of your life or, you know, destroy an entire town. There are a lot of places that could go, and so I think it would be hard to narrow it down to one thing. Except, I think when you have time travel powers and there are multiple realities and multiple timelines, you know, you can do a lot in that. So who knows where this series could go. I'm very interested. I'm also interested to see like the public reaction, to see, like you were saying, will it be mainstream or will it be kind of this cult following?
Yeah. So, are we at the point of the show where we consider if this is one of the best games, period?
I guess if we have nothing else we want to say about it.
I think I covered all I needed to.
I think I do have one more thing.
Okay.
I really liked how they handled the young adult suicide in this game, which feels like a weird sentence to say.
Mm-hmm.
And like it felt like a realistic portrayal of that kind of a situation, in that you have someone who's not really, for whatever reason, willing to open up to people to talk about things, and even if they are, kind of that ridicule and the potential judgment they might face from doing that kind of comes back to bite them. And so you have this character, Kate Marsh, who is kind of this goody-goody church-going young lady who advocates for abstinence and stuff, and she ends up going to this party and gets drugged, and while she's drugged, students around her are filming her rather than trying to help her, and so the video goes viral, and she doesn't really remember what happened that night, but she was also, it's implied that she was essentially sexually assaulted by one of the students at the school, and that all kind of, she doesn't know how to process that or deal with it, and so you have this campus sexual assault that no one is willing to do anything about because of kind of these systemic issues. The school doesn't want to punish the person who's been accused. They don't want to investigate it because they don't want to find out the truth, which troublingly mirrors a lot of real world situations. And then on the flip side of that, you have this video of this student acting completely out of character and getting mocked for it relentlessly, across all kinds of things, both, you know, in the real world and also in the digital world. And it all just kind of builds up to being this moment where she feels she has no way out. She has no one she can really talk to. no one necessarily believes her about what happened, and it's a very, very tragic scene where Max uses her power to kind of stop time and try and prevent her from jumping off the roof, and it is in fact possible to stop her from jumping off the roof, but it's difficult. And if you say the wrong thing, she ends up jumping, and there's no way to kind of redo that sequence because of the way Max stopped time. It used up her time powers or whatever, and so you have this bubble where you can only make one choice, and if you make the wrong one, the wrong ones, it results in this kind of real tragedy. And I just felt like that was a very accurate way of portraying kind of that hopeless situation where you don't think anything could possibly get better. And it struck a chord with me because one of my friends committed suicide earlier this year, and I didn't see it coming, but there were things he couldn't really talk about, and I only learned that after the fact. And so, I don't know, that just struck home as a very true moment. And I was very affected and wept many tears.
Yeah.
But I think the way that this game reflects the reality of difficult living in a modern time, in a way that no other game has. And I appreciate that a lot. So, on that note, is this game one of the best games, period?
I think yes, because it is able to do all of those things and still be gripping and entertaining and effective. It creates these well-rounded characters that you bond so deeply with, and the storyline is interesting. Of course, there's some beats that I don't quite fully vibe with, but I still can appreciate the thought and care that they were able to put into it. And then, of course, I love the prequel for its representation, just because we need more of that. And if developers are listening, like, the success of this game shows that we need and want more of this setting and these kind of people. Like, yeah, of course it's awesome to be a badass witcher and murder, monsters and beasts, but we still want to see reflections of ourselves and be able to meditate on stuff that's happened in our lives in our games. Like, it's just another form of coping and just exploring who we are in games. So I vote yes.
Okay. I also vote yes, because this game managed to make me nostalgic for a time and place that I have never experienced before. And I felt like I was sad that, that this this wasn't a place, and I was sad that these weren't real people. And throughout the game, there's kind of this sense of loss, but you don't really know how to, there's not any one thing that has been lost. In fact, it's a general sense of loss in that everyone has kind of lost something, whether that's opportunities or people or whatever, and it translates into this very profound nostalgia that I think must have been intentional, because they're even going for that with like the camera and the Polaroids and the constant the constant foreshadowing of these kind of end times events. I don't know how that translates to nostalgia. I was just kind of babbling at the mouth there, but I enjoyed how clever a lot of the dialogue was. Sometimes it was a little bit too clever, where you rewind and you suddenly realize that this line of dialogue that you thought was just kind of a throwaway bit ends up being much more significant for the character saying it or for the character hearing it. There's all kinds of references to time travel movies and books and theories and all kinds of crazy things, and it's all really well put together. Like it's very solid. It's very clear that the Life is Strange team at Dontnod, the writing team must have been given a lot of resources to work with. There must have been a lot of time to refine these scripts, a lot of thought put into them, and putting them together in ways that connect really well and stay consistent, which consistency, I think, is one of the most important things when it comes to time travel stuff. Having a good grasp on where everything is supposed to be and how it's supposed to work in all these different timelines. And it's ultimately just this beautiful game about friendship and love, and has a lot of things to say about the current human condition and growing up in the modern world that I think it's not something we see a lot in video games. Like, I think at least a part of that is what made the first Walking Dead so interesting, seeing Clementine growing up over the course of 5 episodes in the first Telltale game, and then seeing her grow up further in the second season. I think a lot of that is what made those games so interesting, and I think this is a more grounded representation of growing up that we just have never seen before. And I would love to see more things tackle this kind of low-key but intensely interesting and well fleshed out drama, and something that reflects more of reality, I guess. So yeah, I was blown away by how good this game was. I highly recommend it. Thank you, Naomi, for nominating it this week. I enjoyed my time playing through it immensely.
I'm taking a bow right now.
Good. You deserve it.
So now for some opinions completely contrarian to what we just said. So
Contrarian
now is
Corner.
time for Contrarian Corner, where we read negative reviews on Metacritic. So I have a couple. The first one is from Oblivivixen, I think. And they wrote this on September 11th, 2015. And they said, "Hipster nonsense. This game's dialogue is one of the cringiest things I've ever heard in my life. It tries way too hard to be deep, when in actuality it is paper thin. The story meanders for what seems like hours and still goes nowhere. The characters are unlikable robots, and the cringe-inducing dialogue doesn't help. The lip-syncing is god-awful, and the art style looks disgusting." Okay. "The music choice is hilariously bad, etc. Despite all that, everyone will rave about this game, and if someone that doesn't like it comes along, they will tell them that they just don't understand the game, those people, this game." All right. And then from Johnny Maiko in July 27, 2015, they said that the game has good ideas and mechanics, but it's all ruined by a cringe-worthy storyline, punchable and unrelatable characters, below-average facial animations, and amateurish voice acting in most characters. After playing it, it makes me want to rewind time until back when this game was in development and stop it from happening.
I do think we never really mentioned the visuals in the game. That was a good point to bring up. Both the visuals and the audio, we didn't talk about those at all, and those are some pretty important features in this game.
Yeah, they're only like the entire experience of the game, right?
I personally thought that the way this game was framed, which the game itself talks about framing quite often, I thought there were so many interesting shots that you don't typically see in video games. The camera was given a lot of free rein to kind of find the most interesting ways of framing simple actions like sitting down and just like chilling out. And I appreciated that. Like the aesthetic itself isn't like the most graphics intensive ever. to me, if I'm being honest, it felt like a slight step up from where Telltale has been in its graphics department, in kind of maybe more of a shift towards slight realism almost, but still kind of that cartoony graphic novel aesthetic. And I thought it worked really well.
Yeah. I definitely didn't find it gross or whatever that person said. It still works. Yeah, you can tell that it's not, anything spectacular, but it still works within the frame of the game.
Right, because you're not really supposed to be there you're not really supposed to be there to be oohed and awed by the graphics, which aren't anything super great, but they're also they do their job, which they do their job. They frame things in an interesting way. They keep the action moving along, and I didn't personally have any gripes. There was one moment where one of the characters in my game didn't move their mouth while they were talking, which was a little distracting, but that's the only glitch I ever encountered, so that's not bad.
Yeah.
What did you think of the soundtrack?
It was fine. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of just like background music, a little bit teenagery, but I mean that goes with the mood. But it wasn't anything super noteworthy for me. How'd you feel about it?
I liked it. It's kind of a jangly northwestern kind of folky music, sort of.
I like that. Jangly, folky, northwesterny.
Yeah, it's like
I'll put that in my Spotify.
I mean, it is it's hipstery music, if you're in the Pacific Northwest. But I thought it was really relaxing, and it was kind of soothed me into the game very effectively.
Yeah, it just kind of it was a background that just kept you in the mood of the game. I mean, it did its job for sure.
Yeah. I liked that it kind of came to the forefront during moments where you're just kind of chilling out, and oftentimes it was moved kind of into the game itself, where there was a radio playing music, or you're listening to like an MP3 player or something, and it was seamlessly put into the game in interesting ways, and it wasn't bad, but it was, I don't know, to me it felt authentic. Like, this Max would listen to this kind of music as a high schooler. So I don't know, it felt like it added that appropriate soundscape to the entire thing.
Yeah. I will say that I did appreciate the moment where you're Chloe and Rachel, and you can share an earbud, and you can choose to just sit there and listen to the music with them for a while.
Yeah, that was
kind of a cool little moment.
And I confess that I really like the title screen music. I find it very relaxing, to the point where I was just like, I let the game idle and I would just lay down on my bed. I think I took a nap while listening to it at one point. So I guess that gets 2 thumbs up for me if you're looking for napping.
Hipster sleeping music. Yeah.
I mean, it works perfectly like a warm summer or spring day, and you just kind of hear this jangly guitar and you like drift away into dreamland. It worked well.
Nice. You should do the commercial for the soundtrack of the game.
No, that's fine. Buy this music. It's perfect for falling asleep to. It's Pacific Northwest. It's
jangly.
All Jangles. That's the name of the band. All Jangles.
Every time you say jangles, I just picture keys and a kitty, just jangling the keys above. Yeah.
I mean, funny you should mention that. That's basically the album artwork.
Yeah.
This game's heavy.
It is.
And it tackles so much. even though the game itself doesn't initially appear very ambitious, like it's not 1,000-mile square open world or anything like that. I feel like it's one of the more ambitious games I've played over the last few years. Narratively, it takes a lot of risks, and I think manages to nail most of them, if not all of them. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Take that as just like a closing statement for what you will.
Jangly. Hella jangly.
Hella. All right. So if you want to find this podcast, which we'd love it if you did, and considering you're listening to it, you've probably already found it already.
Good job!
Yay! Good job, you.
You did it.
But in case you're wondering where else you can find us, we are on Twitter at bestgamesperiod. You can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, all kinds of different podcasting apps. If you liked the show, or even if you didn't like it, feel free to leave us a review. We always appreciate that feedback. And you can find us on patreon.com/bestgamesperiod if you want to give us a little extra moolah every month to kind of keep the show going and improve it and all that jazz. If you give us $1 a month, you get access to super secret special episodes, which I highly recommend. I think they're pretty good. And on top of that, we usually have polls. We've been kind of forgetting, but that's because it's kind of in the lead up to E3, and we thought we had rewind powers for a little bit. Turns out we were just wrong. So sorry about that. But there won't be an episode next week, I don't think, if you're listening to this on Tuesday during E3 week, just because we're at E3. So we'll be making some E3 related content with Marcus Stewart and Zach Woynar. I don't know how to say his last name. I'm sorry, Zach.
We will ask him, and we will report back to you guys.
Yeah. And I think that's everything. You can also find us on Extra Life, community.extra-life.org. If you're wondering what Extra Life is, it is a fantastic podcast. It is a fantastic children's charity. It's related to Children's Miracle Network hospitals, and basically you play games and you raise money for sick and injured kids in hospitals across the United States and Canada, and you can choose which hospital you want to raise money for when you sign up. It's pretty fantastic, so I highly recommend everyone checks it out, and check out the community site for more things about this podcast and about gaming in general. We're going to have a whole bunch of things going up during E3, so please check all of that out. And with that being said, do you have anything you want to add, Naomi?
Yeah, so this is probably going to be my last podcast in June, actually, because I will be gone out of the country after E3. So I'll catch all you lovely people in July. I'm hopefully going to send some videos or voice recording so I can at least say hi. So just so you guys know where I am for the rest of June. I didn't just disappear off the face of the earth.
She's taking a vacation, everyone.
The first, actual vacation in who knows how long. My goodness.
Us millennials, we don't get vacations.
No, they're usually work vacations.
All right. So with all that being said, we'll be seeing you on the flippity dippity.